Martial arts films are a testament to how often a person can get hit in the head and still remain a functioning human being. So let's talk about The Furious. So this is a martial arts film from Hong Kong or China. It's directed by Kenji Tanigaki, who is primarily a stunt choreographer. He's done stunt work for Rurouni Kenshin and Twilight of the Warriors, like walled in Twilight of the Warriors, and like many other movies. This is his first directorial film in about 5 years. He's done about 5, 6, I think about like 7, 8 films till now. But yeah, like his last film was called Enter the Fat Dragon, which is from 2020. So then I guess like he was busy doing stunt work. So this is his first directorial film in 5 years. Okay, it stars Ji Mao, Joe Taslim, who is from like if you've seen the Raid films, he's in that. There's a guest appearance by Yayan Ruyan, who was also in the Raid films. There's Brian Lee, who was actually like him and his brother, from what I read, are actually like YouTubers and self-trained martial artists, and like someone saw them, and that's how he got a role in this. He's really good. There's Joey Iwanaga, who is the main villain, and there's Yang Enyu, who is the hero's daughter. So talking about the plot, it's pretty simple. Like if you've seen the trailer, you know what the plot is, which is the hero is like the great thing about the movie is it doesn't really specify where it's taking place. It just says somewhere in the South China Sea, because I guess like because the primary plot revolves like child trafficking, so I guess they didn't want to badmouth any particular country, so it's just like somewhere in the South China Sea. And our hero is a Chinese immigrant who lives there. He's mute, so he doesn't have any dialogues. And he's like a handyman, he like repairs stuff, and he has a daughter. And like he knows martial arts, because in the beginning they show them doing martial arts. And then his daughter gets kidnapped and he has to basically go and rescue his daughter. Like that's pretty much the plot. And along the way, he runs into like Joe Taslim's character, who is named Naveen, and he's a journalist, and his wife is also a journalist. So his wife has also disappeared, and like Naveen is looking for his wife, and both the characters, like Ji Mao's character and Joe Taslim's character, are people with a very specific set of skills. So they are sort of perfectly capable of handling this kind of a situation. Okay, so that's pretty much the film. So coming to the positives, amazing action scenes. Like all the martial arts stuff is very well choreographed and very well shot. And I think almost everyone involved knows martial arts. So, I don't think they've used any stunt doubles anywhere. And you also get like a whole variety of scenarios. So you have a fight scene in a truck, you have a fight scene in an ice factory, inside an MMA ring. Like if you've seen the trailer, you've seen like parts of the stuff from the MMA ring fight sequence. And then you have a fight sequence in a police station. You even have a fight sequence on a motorcycle. At one point, even the little girl gets a chance to like beat up some of the bad guys. So it's like, a fair variety, and it gets interspersed, pretty regularly. Like you start off with a fight scene, then there's a little bit of dialogue, then you get another fight scene, and then a little bit of dialogue, another fight scene. So it kind of makes sure that you're here to see fight scenes, and you get like a whole bunch of them interspersed at like regular intervals in the film. So at no point do you go like, oh, it's been a while since people kick the shit out of each other. No, they kick the shit out of each other fairly regularly in this movie. So that is the big positive of the movie. Also, another thing to mention is I like the camera work for the fight sequences, because I follow a lot of people on Twitter who post films on a regular basis, which is how I find out about most of the movies I watch. But there are these couple of people who post regularly about like action films, and they'll post a lot of clips from like direct-to-video action movies. And there's this trend that I've noticed where they do a lot of like these swooping moves using like very wide angle lenses, and I'm not a big fan of that. That's also one of the reasons like one of my issues with Superman from last year, where they were using like really wide angle lenses, and I don't particularly like that. That doesn't happen in this film, right? They shoot with like standard, I think like 28 millimeter or whatever, but it looks normal. Like it doesn't look like, everything doesn't look like stretched out, which is not something that I like. So yeah, so that's like the big positive. Like the fight sequences are great. So if you're going in to see fight sequences, yes, you will get your money's worth. The negatives is everything else in the middle. So all the drama stuff that happens in the middle is all very sort of average and mediocre. The hero luckily doesn't have any dialogue, so you can't, don't have any complaints there. But in general, the dialogues are very meh. Okay, so not very well written dialogues. The acting is also a bit iffy in places. Like especially you have the actors who are playing the police. That is like a lot of them are like not particularly great actors. Like there's this scene which is kind of hilarious. Because of how over the top it is, where there's this point where they finally find out like where the children are being kept, and they go into like rescue the kids, and they put out like a message online saying like there are kids being kept here, so send the police, we need to. And the main, like the police chief is corrupt, so you get this scene where all the cops show up with like guns and everything, and the police are like, no, you don't need to go in there, this has nothing to do with us. You're like, and then the best thing is like like a whole army of bad guys sort of storm into the place with like knives and hatchets and like hammers, and the police is like, no, there's no need to go in there, this has nothing to do with you guys, like just stand down. So it's kind of really ridiculous and over the top, and the acting is like very, very iffy. So that I think is the big problem, because when I was thinking about it, like what makes for a great action movie is like not only do they have great action scenes, but also the stuff in the middle is memorable. So you have like, whether you have like great one-liners or you have interesting characters. Here the thing is you have interesting characters, but because the dialogues aren't particularly great, like maybe one of the characters should have been given like a one-liner. Like when Yayan's character shows up, give him a good one-liner or something, like stuff like that. That is what is missing. So just to like, if you think about it, like whether it's like Predator or Die Hard or any of the big action movies that are famous, is that not only are the action sequences good, but it's also the stuff in the middle that keeps you interested. And that is the big issue. Like one of the films that I really like, I like the Baby Assassin series, and the Baby Assassin series are not very action heavy. Like they do have like, you'll usually get like 2 or 3 action sequences, but I genuinely like the characters. Like I like the 2 lead actresses and their characters, and like they're basically like these slacker girls who are like really trying to get through a normal job. So all of that remains very amusing. So when the fight sequences happen, that's like, oh, they're great fight sequences, but you also have stuff in the middle that I remain interested in. The same thing with something like Raid 2, which is, I prefer Raid 2 over the Raid, because Raid 2 again, like it takes like the premise and like really expands it, and it turns into like this gangster epic with like double crosses and backstabbing and all of that. So even though like you get like really intense fight sequences, you also have a lot of stuff in the middle that keeps you interested. So that is what is missing here. Also, this is not a negative, just like something I noticed was, it's not, the action scenes are not as violent as I thought they would be in terms of like blood and gore. Like you do get a couple of moments where it gets violent, but you don't have as much blood and stuff. Like even though you do have sequences where like he's beating up people with a hammer, but it never gets as violent as like the Raid films are spectacularly violent, or anything by what's his name, Timo Tajanto, right? Like if you watch something like the Shadow Strays, right, like which is on Netflix, that film is like super violent. Like there's a shot in the beginning where she splits someone in like half, and that is like, or even like Korean stuff, right? You watch something like Mercy for None, and there's a point in that, in like the second episode, where he stabs someone through the cheek with a pencil. So you don't get stuff like that. which is like, I'm guessing, yeah, like Hong Kong films don't get that violent. So yes, the action sequences are great, but it never crosses the line into being like very bloody or very gory, which again, like, it varies, like what you like and what you don't like. But yeah, like very, very well made action sequences overall. So as a recommendation, like absolutely, like if you like action movies, if you like martial arts films, this should definitely be on your list. As I said, like it's just, as a film overall, it's it's nice, but if the dialogues were better, it would have been nicer.